Don't sign it, sir. He already sold it last night. The little voice did not rise above a shout, but it cut through the Harrington Grand Ballroom as sharply as a glass dropped on marble. For one suspended second, every crystal chandelier seemed to stop glittering. Every fork froze halfway to a plate. Every smile on every polished face held its place like a mask waiting to crack. At the front of the room, beneath a wall of white orchids and blue corporate lights, William Harrington stood with a gold pin in his hand, its tip hovering over the final page of a $10 billion clean energy partnership agreement. He was 46, tall, white, silver at the temples, the kind of man newspapers called visionary and competitors called impossible. He had built towers across Chicago, wind farms across the Midwest, and a reputation so cold and exact that even his friends sometimes sounded like employees when they spoke to him. Beside him stood Victor Langley, his longtime partner, smiling with the calm patience of a man who had already won. Between them, the contract waited on a glass podium. Then the little girl stepped forward. She was 8 years old, black, small enough that the adults around her seemed like a forest of black tuxedos and satin gowns. Her name was Zoe Carter, though almost no one in that room knew it yet. She wore a plain navy dress under a faded gray cardigan, and her hair was braided neatly with 2 yellow beads at the ends, beads that clicked softly when she moved. Pressed against her chest was an old yellow sketchbook, its corners bent, its cover softened by fingerprints and time. In her other hand, she held a short blue pencil with the eraser worn down to almost nothing. Her mother, Monica Carter, a night shift cleaning worker in Harrington Tower, stood 20 feet behind her near the service doors, one hand lifted in quiet alarm. Zoe, Monica whispered, not angry, only frightened by the room, by the cameras, by the fact that her daughter had just spoken into a silence meant for billionaires. William looked down at the child, then at the page she was holding out. It was a drawing, rough in the way children's drawings are rough, with lines too. Heavy in some places and colors pressed too hard into the paper. It showed a man in a dark suit standing inside a glass-walled office. Beside him was a table, a silver laptop, a leather briefcase, and a small object shaped like a USB drive. Near the top corner, Zoe had written 17B in careful block letters. William's eyes moved over it once, too quickly. His jaw tightened, not with fear, but irritation. He had spent 8 months preparing this signing ceremony. The mayor was in the room. 2 senators were in the room. Investors from New York, Dallas, and San Francisco were watching from the first 3 rows. For cameras were streaming the event to business networks. And now a child with a sketchbook was standing between him and the cleanest victory of his career. Sweetheart, William said, his voice low and controlled, the way adults speak when they want a child to disappear without feeling dismissed. This is not the time. Zoe did not lower the drawing. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. I saw him last night, she said. In the private room. The one with the blue light by the door. A ripple moved through the ballroom. It began as a murmur near the back, then traveled forward in soft waves of disbelief. Victor gave a small laugh, gentle enough to sound kind, polished enough to sound harmless. Will, he said, placing one hand over his heart, she is confused. Children see shadows and turn them into stories. It happens. Zoe turned toward him. She did not glare. She simply looked, with the unnerving stillness of someone who had spent her life noticing what adults missed. I draw what I see, she said. The words were small. They should have vanished under the hum of the air conditioning and the distant traffic rolling along Wacker Drive outside. But they did not vanish. They stayed there, hanging over the white orchids, the champagne glasses, the folded napkins, and the open contract. William exhaled through his nose and looked toward security, then stopped when he saw Monica near the service entrance. He recognized her vaguely. Night crew. South elevator. Always nodded. Never spoke unless spoken to. Monica stepped forward, her face full of apology and fear, but also something stronger beneath it. The look of a mother deciding whether fear was allowed to be bigger than truth. Mr. Harrington, she said softly, I'm sorry. She was waiting for me to finish my shift. She draws to stay awake. I didn't know she was going to come in here. Victor's smile widened by a fraction. There we are, he said. No harm done. A tired child, a late night, a misunderstanding. He reached toward the drawing as if to take it, and in the moment cleanly. Zoe pulled it back against her chest. William noticed that. Not because it mattered, he told himself. Not because he believed her, but because Victor's fingers, elegant and steady during every negotiation William had ever seen, had tightened for half a second when Zoe mentioned the blue light. Claire Bennett, William's chief of staff, stood near the podium with a tablet tucked under one arm. She had been with him for 12 years and had learned to read silence the way other people read emails. Her eyes moved from Zoe to Victor, then to the drawing. Mr. Harrington, Claire said carefully. Room 17B was locked last night. William did not turn his head. I know. Only executive credentials can open it. I know that too. Zoe took one step closer, the soles of her little black shoes making a faint sound on the marble. The yellow beads at the ends of her braids clicked once. The clock on his wrist was broken, she said. It stayed at 11:42. Victor's face did not change, but the champagne flute in his hand tilted slightly, just enough for the light to catch the rim. William finally looked at him. Victor wore his usual platinum watch, the one with a black face and a thin scratch near the clasp. It was ticking now, smooth and expensive. William looked back at the drawing. There, on the wrist of the sketched man, Zoe had drawn a dark circle with two tiny hands, both pointing upward at an angle. A child's detail. A foolish detail. An impossible detail. She could have seen my watch anywhere, Victor said, still smiling, though his voice had lost a little warmth. I'm not exactly hiding it. Zoe opened the sketchbook to another page. This one showed the same. Glass office, but from a different angle. The man in the drawing stood near a large potted plant by the hallway window. Beside him was another man, broader, with a gold ring on his right hand. Zoe had colored the ring yellow, pressing so hard the paper nearly tore. William stared at that ring. Something cold moved through him. He knew that ring. He had seen it across conference tables, in hostile offers, in photographs beside headlines about failed buyouts and aggressive acquisitions. Evan Cole, CEO of North Star Grid, the competitor who had tried for 2 years to get inside Harrington's battery storage project and failed. Where did you see this man? William asked. For the first time, his voice was not dismissive. Zoe swallowed. Around her, the room leaned in without moving. By the service hallway, she said. Near the big plant. I was sitting on the floor with my sketchbook because Mom said not to wander. Mr. Victor came out of the glass room. He had something silver in his hand. Then he gave it to the man with the yellow ring. The ballroom went so quiet that the elevator bell in the far lobby sounded like a church chime. Victor gave another laugh, but now it landed strangely, too dry, too fast. This is absurd, he said. William, you cannot seriously allow a child's drawing to interrupt a legally binding event. William's fingers closed around the gold pen. He looked down at the contract, at the signature line waiting for his name, at Victor's name already printed beside his. For years, he had trusted numbers because numbers did not cry, flatter, beg, or betray. People did. That was what he believed. That was why he had built his life out of locked rooms, private codes, signed agreements, and men who understood consequences. Yet the person standing in front of him now, with the most specific evidence in the room, was not an executive, not an attorney, not a consultant earning 6 figures to notice risk. It was a little black girl with a yellow sketchbook and a pencil so short it barely fit in her hand. Claire stepped closer and lowered her voice. Sir, we should pause the signing. Victor turned sharply. No, we should not. This is exactly how rumors start. A pause implies suspicion. Zoe looked up at William, and her voice softened, not weaker, just sadder. You don't have to believe me, she said. But please don't sign before you look closer. Something in that sentence found a place inside William that had not been touched in years. Not because it was dramatic, because it was reasonable, because she was not asking to be praised or rescued or paid. She was asking him to look. William slowly set the gold pen down on the glass podium. The tiny click of metal against glass moved through the room like a verdict. Cameras shifted. Reporters straightened. Victor's smile disappeared for the first time. William looked at Claire. Lock the doors to the executive floor, he said. Pull every access log from last night. And nobody leaves with a company device until I say so. Then he turned back to Zoe Carter, who still held her drawing against her chest, as if it were both a shield and a truth too heavy for one child to carry alone. Show me every page, he said. The request passed through the ballroom like a cold current under closed doors. For the first time that evening, William Harrington was no longer standing in front of the room as a host, a billionaire, or the man about to make history. He was standing there as a man who had almost written his name beside something he had not fully seen. Zoe Carter looked down at her sketchbook, her small thumb pressed against the soft edge of the paper, and for a moment, she did not move. The adults were staring now, all of them. The same people who had not noticed her near the service hallway, who had looked past her cardigan and her worn shoes and the yellow beads in her braids, were suddenly waiting for her to become clear enough for them to believe. Monica stepped closer, careful, quiet, her work shoes making almost no sound on the marble. "Baby," she whispered, "you do not have to do anything you are scared to do." Zoe looked at her mother, and something steady passed between them, something built from late buses, packed lunches, borrowed crayons, and the kind of courage that grows in small apartments where nobody has room to fall apart for too long. "I am not scared," Zoe said, softly. Then she looked at Victor. "I just do not like when grown-ups pretend." A few people near the front shifted in their seats. Victor's expression remained smooth, but the warmth had drained from his eyes. "William," he said, his voice lower now, meant only for the circle around the podium, "this has gone far enough. You are allowing an employee's child to embarrass this company in front of national press." Monica's shoulders tightened at the word employee, but she did not bow her head. William heard it too. The old version of him might have accepted the sentence as practical. The version of him holding Zoe's drawing in his mind heard something else inside it, a door closing on a child before she had finished speaking. "Claire," William said without looking away from Victor, "have security hold all exits from the executive floor." Politely. "No scene." Claire was already typing into her tablet. "Done. And the access logs." "Pulling now." Victor let out a slow breath, almost a laugh. "This is theater." Zoe opened the sketchbook. Page after page trembled under the ballroom lights, not because her hands were weak, but because every eye in the room had weight. The first drawing showed the glass office marked 17B. The second showed Victor near the potted plant with the man who wore the gold ring. The third showed the hallway from a lower angle, as if drawn by someone sitting cross-legged against the wall. In that picture, Zoe had sketched the reflection in the glass beside the elevators. It was faint, made with pale gray pencil lines, but it showed a rectangle of light on a laptop screen and a shape that looked like a file name. Claire leaned in. "May I see that?" Zoe glanced at William. He nodded once. She handed the sketchbook to Claire, not to Victor, and that small choice made his jaw flex. Claire studied the page. "This is the East Elevator Bank," she said. The reflection would face the hallway outside 17B. William looked at the drawing again. The details were not perfect, but they were too specific to be invented. The ceiling light panels were drawn in the correct pattern. The door handle had the unusual vertical bar that only existed on the restricted conference rooms. Even the little blue security light was placed on the right side of the frame. "What time was this?" William asked. Zoe touched the corner of the page. "After the cleaning cart, Will got stuck." Monica blinked. "That was around 11:30. I remember because I told you we had to hurry if we were going to catch the last bus before midnight." Zoe nodded. Then Mr. Victor came out. He was talking quiet, but the other man laughed. Not loud, like he did not want to be heard. Victor's smile returned, but it was thin now. A child overheard a laugh and turned it into corporate espionage. "Incredible. I did not hear everything," Zoe said. Her voice stayed calm, and somehow that made the room listen harder. "I saw the silver thing. I saw the ring. I saw him put his hand on the plant like this." She placed her palm flat in the air, then curled her fingers slightly, showing the gesture, like he was hiding something behind it. William turned toward the large potted fiddle leaf fig near the west entrance of the ballroom. It was not the same plant, but the sight of it pulled his attention sharply toward the lobby beyond. "The plant by the service hallway," he said to Claire. "Have it checked." Victor stepped forward. "Absolutely not." The words came too quickly, too forcefully. Even he seemed to realize it, because he straightened his cuffs and softened his tone. "I mean, we are not going to send people digging through decorative plants because of a drawing." William faced him fully now. The friendship between them had been built over 17 years, across private flights, failed deals, late-night strategy calls, and rooms full of men who liked to call loyalty by the name profit. Yet in this moment, William could not find his friend. He could only find a man standing too close to the truth and asking everyone else to step away from it. If there is nothing there, William said, then we lose 30 seconds. Victor's eyes flicked toward the reporters, then back. And if this spectacle damages the share price tomorrow morning, then I will survive being embarrassed. William looked toward Zoe. She may not survive being ignored. The sentence landed. Quietly, but it changed the air. Monica's eyes shone, though she stayed still. Zoe lowered her gaze for the first time, as if praise made her more uncomfortable than suspicion. Claire's tablet chimed. She looked down, and her face shifted. Not dramatically. Claire Bennett was not dramatic. But the color left her cheeks in a way William had seen only twice before, both times before disasters that had cost millions. Sir, she said, there is a problem with the access log. Victor folded his arms. Of course there is. Claire ignored him. Room 17B shows no entry under Mr. Langley's credentials last night. Victor spread one hand as if the matter had ended. There. May we return to reality. Claire looked up. But it does show an emergency maintenance override at 11:39. The override was authorized from a senior executive terminal. William's eyes narrowed. Whose terminal? Claire hesitated, and that hesitation was louder than any answer. Yours, sir. A shocked murmur rolled through the ballroom. William stood very still. Victor turned to him with practiced concern. Will, this is exactly what I feared. Someone is trying to create confusion around you. Zoe pulled the sketchbook back to her chest. No, she said. Everyone looked at her again. She pointed to the third drawing, to the faint reflection near the elevator glass. That is not Mr. Harrington's hand on the computer. Her small finger hovered above the page. Mr. Harrington wears his wedding ring on this hand in the picture by the front desk. The man last night used the other hand, and he had a scratch on his watch. William slowly turned his head toward Victor's platinum watch, toward the thin scratch near the clasp, shining under the ballroom lights like a line drawn by fate. The scratch on Victor Langley's watch became the smallest thing in the room, and somehow the only thing anyone could see. It caught the blue light from the corporate backdrop, a thin pale mark across polished platinum, no longer just a flaw in an expensive accessory, but a line connecting a child's drawing to a locked room, a missing file, and a signature William Harrington had almost given away. Victor lowered his wrist. Almost casually, but the movement came a second too late. William noticed. Claire noticed. Zoe noticed too, though she did not look proud of herself. She looked tired, the way children look when they have carried an adult truth farther than any child should have to carry it. That proves nothing, Victor said, each word measured now, carefully placed like stones across a dangerous stream. Half the men in this room wear watches. Half the men in Chicago have scratches on them. Are we really going to build a federal case from a crayon sketch? It is pencil, Zoe said quietly. Blue pencil. A few people turned toward her, surprised not by the correction, but by how steady it was. She was not trying to win an argument. She was trying to keep the truth from being smoothed over by a man who knew how to sound reasonable. William lifted one hand toward the room, asking for silence without raising his voice. The murmurs faded. Somewhere behind the reporters, a camera lens adjusted with a soft mechanical click. Claire, he said, send 2 security supervisors to the service hallway. Have them check the planter Zoe identified. Record the search from start to finish. Claire nodded and spoke into her phone in a low voice. Victor stepped close to William, close enough to look like an old friend offering protection. Will, listen to me. You are letting this become a circus. Even if someone accessed 17B, even if someone planted something near a hallway plant, this child cannot possibly understand what she saw. People will say you lost control of your own event. William looked at him, and the years between them flickered through his mind in sharp, silent flashes. Victor laughing on a private jet over Denver. Victor raising a toast after their first billion-dollar quarter. Victor sitting beside him at his father's funeral, one hand on his shoulder, saying, "You never have to carry the empire alone." For a long time, William had mistaken closeness for loyalty. Now, under the ballroom lights, he saw how similar the two could look from a distance. Maybe I did lose control, William said. Or maybe control was the thing that kept me from seeing. Victor's expression tightened. Not much. Just enough. Zoe held the sketchbook against her chest while Monica stood beside her now, one arm near her daughter, but not pulling her away. Monica's face had settled into a calm that seemed stronger than fear. She knew rooms like this could turn quickly. She knew powerful people could make ordinary people feel like they had stepped onto forbidden ground. But she also knew her daughter. Zoe did not invent details to feel important. Zoe drew the world because the world often moved too fast for adults to tell the truth about it. "Miss Carter," Williams said, turning to Monica, "was Zoe with you the entire night?" Monica swallowed. "Yes, sir. I signed in at 9 p.m. We cleaned the West Corridor first, then the executive lounge. Zoe sat near my cart with her sketchbook. She knows not to touch anything." Victor gave a short, polished sigh. "With respect, Monica, bringing a child onto a restricted business floor after hours is already a violation." Monica's eyes flicked downward, but only for a breath. "The sitter canceled. I could not miss the shift. That is not my point." "It should be," Williams said. Victor froze. Williams' voice remained calm, but something in it had sharpened. A mother should not have to choose between keeping her job and keeping her child safe. "We can discuss policy later. Right now, we are discussing why a senior executive override was used from my terminal while I was not in the building." Claire's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, then at William. "Security is at the planter." The ballroom seemed to inhale. The large screens behind the podium, which moments earlier had displayed glowing renderings of wind farms and battery facilities, shifted to a live security feed. The image was plain, almost dull: a hallway with cream walls, a dark green plant in a heavy ceramic pot, two uniformed security supervisors wearing gloves, and the reflection of overhead lights on polished floor tile. No music played now. No one lifted a glass. The gala had become something quieter and more dangerous than celebration. One guard tilted the planter gently while the other checked behind the wide leaves. Nothing. Victor let out the faintest breath through his nose, and some of the tension in his shoulders eased. Then Zoe stepped closer to the screen. Her eyebrows pulled together. "Not that side," she said. Claire looked down. "What do you mean?" Zoe pointed with her blue pencil, its broken tip hovering in the air. "In my drawing, the plant shadow goes across the wall. That means the hallway light was behind it." He put his hand on the other side, by the window. Claire repeated the instruction into her phone. On the screen, the guard moved around the planter and reached carefully along the inside rim, facing the glass. His fingers paused. The room went silent in a way that felt physical, as if the air had turned to glass. Slowly, he pulled out a small silver drive sealed inside a clear plastic sleeve, taped beneath the lip of the ceramic pot. Monica covered her mouth. Claire closed her eyes for half a second. William did not move at all. Victor looked at the screen, then away from it, his face still composed but strangely empty now, as if the mask had remained after the man behind it had stepped back into darkness. "That could belong to anyone," he said. But his voice had changed. It no longer filled the room. It had to fight to cross the few feet between him and William. Claire spoke softly into the phone, then looked up. "They are bringing it to digital forensics. Chain of custody is recorded." Zoe did not smile. She simply turned another page in her sketchbook. This drawing was quieter than the others. It showed William's framed portrait in the executive lobby, the one where he stood beside a model of Harrington Tower. In the corner, Zoe had drawn the reflection of a computer screen on the dark glass wall. Beneath it, in uneven letters, she had copied what she saw: H storage final transfer. William leaned closer, and the words blurred for a moment, not because they were unclear, but because he understood them too well. H storage was the internal name for the battery project. Final transfer was not a phrase anyone outside the restricted team should know. "Zoe," he asked, his voice softer, "why did you draw the words?" She looked up at him. "Because I did not know what they meant," she said. "And when I do not know something, I draw it so I can ask later." The answer passed through William with a force he did not expect. He thought of all the rooms where adults had known exactly what things meant and still chosen not to ask. He thought of contracts read too quickly, friendships trusted too easily, quiet workers unseen in bright hallways, and a little girl sitting on the floor with a pencil, preserving the truth because no one had told her it was too valuable for her to touch. Victor reached into his jacket, then stopped when two security officers appeared near the ballroom entrance. They did not rush. They did not accuse. They simply stood there, visible enough to remind everyone that the room had changed. William turned to Victor one last time before the evidence reached forensic review. "Tell me now," he said, "before the drive speaks for you." Victor's lips parted. For the first time all night, no answer came. Victor Langley stood beneath the ballroom lights with the stillness of a man who understood that movement could look like guilt. His face remained composed. His cuff links remained straight. His silver hair remained perfectly brushed back, but the silence around him had changed shape. It no longer belonged to the audience. It belonged to the evidence on its way to forensic review, to the small silver drive found exactly where Zoe Carter had drawn it, and to William Harrington, who was looking at his partner as if 17 years had suddenly become a locked door with the wrong key inside. "Tell me now," William repeated, quieter this time, "before the drive speaks for you." Victor drew in a breath through his nose, slow and controlled. "I have nothing to confess." The words were clean, but they did not land cleanly. They slipped across the marble and disappeared under the heavy hush of the room. Zoe watched him from beside her mother, her sketchbook held close, her blue pencil pressed between two fingers. She did not understand corporate betrayal in the way adults understood it, with valuations, leverage, board seats, and non-disclosure agreements. She understood it the way children understand unfairness. Someone had done something wrong. Someone powerful had smiled while doing it. And now everyone was trying to decide whether the truth mattered more than comfort. Claire stepped closer to William, lowering her tablet slightly. "Digital forensics has the drive. They are isolating it from the network before opening anything." William nodded, but his eyes never left Victor. "Good." Victor turned toward the room as if the investors, reporters, and elected officials might still become his jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. A misplaced storage device has been discovered near a hallway plant, and somehow this has become a public accusation. I am sure when reasonable people review the facts, we will all regret how quickly suspicion was allowed to replace judgment." He gave a small, practiced smile. It almost worked. For years, that smile had settled nervous boardrooms and quieted hostile shareholders. It had made bad quarters sound temporary and risky deals sound inevitable. But tonight, it met a room that had seen a child point to a hidden object before any adult knew it was there. The smile could not erase that. Zoe opened her sketchbook again, turning the pages with careful fingers. Monica leaned toward her. "What is it, baby?" "There was another thing," Zoe whispered. William heard her and softened his voice. "You can say it." Zoe looked down at the page she had stopped on. This drawing was darker, shaded with gray pencil along the glass walls and blue pencil near the security light. It showed Victor standing inside room 17B, but not alone. The second figure, the man with the gold ring, stood partly behind the open door. Between them, Zoe had drawn a rectangle on the table with little lines coming out from it, the way a child might draw sound. Under the picture, in uneven handwriting, she had written 4 words she had copied without understanding. "Blame the cleaning woman." Monica went completely still. For a moment, the ballroom, the cameras, the flowers, the contract, all of it seemed to fall away from William's vision. He looked at the words, then at Monica, then at Victor. "What did you just show me?" he asked, though his voice already knew the answer. Zoe swallowed. "I heard that part. Not all of it. Just that part." The man with the ring said, "If anyone asks, blame the cleaning woman." Then Mr. Victor said, "Nobody listens to night staff." Monica's hand rose to her chest, not dramatic, not loud, just a small movement from someone who had spent too many years being careful in places that could remove her with a phone call. Victor's eyes sharpened. "That is outrageous." "Is it?" William asked. Victor turned to him. "Will, you know me. I thought I did. You are letting a child repeat a phrase she may have misheard after midnight." She did not misdraw the drive. Victor's lips pressed together. William stepped closer, not threateningly, but with the kind of calm that made the entire room lean away from Victor's defense. "Did you use my terminal?" "No." "Did you access room 17B?" "No." "Did you meet Evan Cole in my building last night?" Victor blinked once. No, the denial came too fast. Claire's tablet chimed again, and the sound was small but devastating. She read the message, then looked at William. Forensics found a folder on the drive. It contains a copy of the H storage final transfer package, along with a draft message addressed to Northstar Grid Legal. The room erupted into whispers. Victor raised both hands slightly, palms open. Anyone could have put that there. Claire continued, her voice steady. There is also a metadata trail. The export was created at 11:43 p.m. from an executive workstation registered to your office, Mr. Langley. Victor turned pale in a way no lighting could hide. Still, he tried one more time. My credentials were duplicated. William studied him. By whom? Victor looked toward Monica. It was only a glance, brief as a flicker, but everyone saw it. Zoe stepped in front of her mother before anyone asked her to move, not as a shield against danger, but as a child placing herself beside the truth she had carried. My mom does not even know your password, she said. Her voice trembled now, but it did not break. She knows where the paper towels go. She knows which elevators make noise. She knows which trash bags leak. She knows how to work when everybody else gets to go home. She did not steal your thing. The words struck William harder than any accusation. He looked at Monica, at the uniform she still wore under her dark coat, at the work badge clipped near her shoulder, at the tired dignity in her face. Then he looked back at Victor. You were going to let her take the blame. Victor's mask slipped. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. His voice lowered, bitter at the edges. You were going to sign away half the future of this company without reading the revised risk language. I protected myself. William stared at him. You sold us out. I made a move before you buried us under your pride. The sentence hung there, ugly and honest. Claire stopped typing. The reporters stopped whispering. Even the cameras seemed to become quiet. Victor realized too late that he had said more than he meant to say. William turned toward the security supervisors at the entrance. Mr. Langley is no longer authorized to access Harrington's systems, offices, devices, or private communications. Escort him to a conference room and wait for corporate counsel. Victor's eyes flashed with panic, then calculation, then something almost like grief. William shook his head once. Do not use my name like friendship is still evidence. As security approached calmly, Victor adjusted his jacket as though he could still leave with dignity. Zoe watched him pass, then looked back at her drawing. The blue pencil mark over the security light had smudged onto her thumb. William saw it and lowered himself to one knee, bringing his eyes level with hers in front of everyone. Zoe, he said softly, I am sorry I did not look closer the first time. She studied him for a long second. Then she held out the sketchbook. You can look now, she said. The sketchbook felt heavier in William Harrington's hands than any contract he had ever signed. Its cover was soft at the corners, yellow faded into the color of late afternoon sunlight, the pages uneven from being carried in backpacks, buses, break rooms, and quiet hallways where a child had learned to wait without being noticed. He held it carefully, as if pressing too hard might damage the truth inside it. Around him, the ballroom had not recovered. The orchids were still bright, the champagne still untouched, the corporate banners still glowing with promises about the future, but the celebration had become something else entirely. Investors whispered into phones. Reporters typed with their eyes lifted. Members of the board stood in small frozen clusters, wearing the pale expressions of people calculating how close they had come to disaster. Victor Langley had been guided through the side entrance with corporate counsel following behind him, his back straight, his face turned away from the cameras, his expensive shoes making almost no sound against the marble. William did not watch him leave. He was watching Zoe. She stood beside Monica with her hands now empty, her fingers curled slightly, as if they still expected the sketchbook to be there. Without it, she looked even smaller, but not weaker. The room had tried to shrink her into an interruption, a mistake, a child who misunderstood adult matters. Instead, she had made the entire room look at what it had been trained to ignore. Claire stepped beside William and spoke softly. Sir, the board is requesting a private emergency session. Legal is asking whether we should remove the press from the room. Security has secured the executive floor, and information technology has frozen all external transfers. William nodded, but his eyes stayed on the drawing open in his hands, the one with the words "Blame the cleaning woman" written beneath careful pencil lines. Not yet, he said. Claire looked at him. Not yet to which part? All of it. He closed the sketchbook gently and turned toward the microphone still standing at the podium. The same microphone he had planned to use for a victory speech now waited under the blue lights like a test. A few board members shifted nervously when he stepped toward it. Monica's eyes widened, and she instinctively drew Zoe a little closer. William saw the fear in that movement, the fear of being named in public by someone powerful, even for something good. He understood then how often public attention was not a gift to people without power. Sometimes it was a spotlight too hot to stand under. So when he spoke, he did not say Zoe's full name. He did not make her a spectacle. He did not turn her courage into entertainment for the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," Williams said, his voice echoing through the ballroom, calm but changed. "The signing ceremony is postponed pending a full internal and legal review. What happened tonight will be handled with transparency, but it will also be handled responsibly. No member of my staff, no employee of this building, and no child connected to them will be blamed, pressured, or exposed for telling the truth." The last words settled over the room with unexpected force. Monica lowered her eyes, and for the first time that night, her shoulders loosened. Zoe looked up at William as if she were trying to decide whether adults could mean things after they said them. William turned from the microphone and walked back to them. He did not rush. Rushing would have made the moment feel like crisis management. He moved slowly, giving the room time to understand that this was not a gesture. It was a choice. "Monica," he said, keeping his voice low enough that the cameras could not catch every word, "I owe you an apology as well." Monica blinked. "Sir, you do not have to." "I do." He looked toward the service doors, then back at her badge. "You have worked in my building at night, around my offices, near my company's most important rooms, and I did not know your name until your daughter had to protect it." Monica's mouth tightened, not in anger, but in the effort of holding herself together. "Most people do not know the names on the night shift. That is going to change." Zoe studied him carefully. "Are we in trouble?" The question was so simple that it stripped away every polished sentence William might have used. He lowered himself again, not too close, just enough to meet her eyes. "No, you and your mother are not in trouble." Zoe's thumb brushed the blue smudge still marking her skin. "But Mr. Victor said Mom broke a rule." William took a breath. "Sometimes rules show us what a company values. Sometimes they show us what a company forgot to value." Monica looked at him then, really looked at him. "I brought her because I had no one else tonight." "I understand. With respect, Mr. Harrington, people say that when they do not." He accepted the words because they were true. In all his towers, there were gyms, lounges, executive dining rooms, private elevators, and climate-controlled garages. But there was not a safe place where a night worker's child could sit when life did not arrange itself neatly around policy. William looked toward Claire. "Find an empty conference room away from the cameras. Food, water, a quiet place for Monica and Zoe. No press, no staff questions, just privacy." Claire nodded immediately. "Of course." Zoe reached for her sketchbook, and William handed it back with both hands. "Thank you," she said. Not warmly. Not yet. Just honestly. As Claire guided them toward a side corridor, the room parted for Monica and Zoe in a way it had not when they entered. No one laughed. No one dismissed them. Some looked ashamed. Some looked grateful. Most looked uncertain, as if the building itself had shifted by a few inches and they were relearning where to stand. William followed a few steps behind, away from the podium, away from the cameras, away from the contract that would not be signed tonight. In the glass wall near the corridor, he caught his reflection beside Zoe's smaller one. For years, he had believed power meant seeing farther than everyone else. But the reflection told a different story. A little girl sitting on the floor had seen what a billionaire at the top of the tower had missed. In the quiet conference room, Zoe sat at the long table with a bottle of water and a turkey sandwich Claire had found from the catering kitchen. She placed the sketchbook beside her plate, close enough to touch. Monica sat next to her, still wearing her work badge, still looking as if she expected someone to knock and correct the kindness. William stood near the doorway, unsure for the first time in years what authority was supposed to sound like. Finally, Zoe opened the sketchbook to a blank page and picked up her short blue pencil. "What are you drawing now?" William asked softly. Zoe looked at the closed door, then at her mother, then at him. "The room after everybody finally listened," she said. The quiet conference room did not feel quiet to William Harrington. Beyond the closed door, the gala continued to unravel in low voices, phone calls, legal instructions, and the soft rush of important people trying to appear calm while their world tilted beneath them. Inside the room, the air was cooler, the lights were dimmer, and the long walnut table reflected the city lights from the window like dark water. Zoe Carter sat near the middle chair with her yellow sketchbook open, her short blue pencil moving slowly across a blank page. Monica sat beside her, one hand wrapped around a paper cup of water, the other resting near her daughter's elbow without touching it, close enough to say "I am here," gentle enough to say "you are still free." William stood near the glass wall with Claire Bennett, watching the city below. Chicago glittered in clean lines and white headlights, the river cutting through downtown like a black ribbon. For most of his life, views like this had made him feel above the noise. Tonight, they made him wonder how much the height had cost him. Claire's tablet chimed again. She glanced at the screen, then stepped closer. "Forensics confirmed the drive contains the H storage transfer package," she said quietly. "There are also encrypted message drafts tied to North Star Grid. Legal is preserving everything." William nodded once. "And Victor?" "In conference room C with counsel and 2 security supervisors outside. He is refusing to answer questions until his attorney arrives." William almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Of course he is." Claire hesitated. "There is more." Monica looked up. Zoe's pencil stopped moving. William turned. "Say it." Claire lowered her voice further, though everyone in the room could hear. Human Resources found a termination form prepared under Monica Carter's employee file. It was drafted this afternoon, but scheduled to be submitted tomorrow morning. Monica's fingers tightened around the cup. The paper gave a faint crackle. Zoe looked at her mother first, then at William. "What does that mean?" Monica answered before he could soften it. "It means somebody was going to make me lose my job." Her voice was steady, but the hurt inside it was not hidden. Zoe looked down at the table. Her yellow beads clicked once as she bowed her head. William felt something hot rise behind his ribs, not anger in the loud sense, but a sharper shame. This was not only about stolen files. It was about a plan built on the assumption that a woman who cleaned offices at night could be erased before breakfast and that nobody in power would ask why. "Who drafted it?" William asked. Claire looked at the tablet again. It was submitted through an administrative account assigned to Victor's office. The reason listed was unauthorized presence of a minor on a restricted floor. Monica closed her eyes. "I knew it." "Mrs. Carter," William said. Monica opened her eyes. "It is Miss Carter." "Miss Carter," he corrected immediately. "That form will not be processed. Your job is safe." She looked at him with a tired caution that made the promise feel smaller than he wanted it to be. "Safe tonight," she said. "What about next week when everyone goes back to their real lives?" The question moved through the room more powerfully than any accusation Victor had made. William had signed thousands of documents promising stability, sustainability, growth, trust. Yet here was a mother asking the only version of security that mattered. What happens after the powerful people stop paying attention? Zoe turned a page and began drawing again, faster now, her pencil making soft, dry strokes. William looked at the sketch. It showed the conference room they were in now, the water cup, the sandwich wrapper, Claire's tablet, Monica's work badge, and William standing too far away from the table. Zoe drew him with long legs and square shoulders, but no mouth. "Why did you draw me like that?" he asked. Zoe glanced up. "Because you are thinking too much to talk right." Claire pressed her lips together, almost smiling. Monica gave Zoe a gentle look that carried both warning and pride. William accepted it. "That is fair." Zoe shaded the space between him and the table. "You look like you want to fix it with a big thing." William was silent. She was right. He had already thought of a donation, a policy announcement, a public statement, a foundation grant, a scholarship fund, all the big things men like him reached for when they discovered a hole in the world and wanted to cover it before anyone saw how deep it was. "Maybe I do," he said. "Big things can help." Zoe nodded. "But little things are where people get missed." The pencil kept moving. No one spoke for several seconds. Claire looked down, not at her tablet this time, but at the floor. Monica's eyes shone with something complicated, because her daughter had said aloud what adults often swallowed to keep jobs, keep peace, keep moving. William walked slowly to the chair across from Zoe and sat down. The movement seemed to surprise her. Billionaires did not usually sit across from children and wait to be taught. "What little thing did we miss?" he asked. Zoe pointed toward the hallway. "The chair by the cleaning closet is broken. Mom stands during break because it leans." Monica blinked. "Zoe." The vending machine takes her quarters and does not give them back. The camera by the west hallway points too high, so it sees heads but not hands. The blue door sticks unless you pull it twice. And the room where I waited is cold because the air blows all night. William listened, each sentence landing like a page from a report no consultant had ever written, because no consultant had sat on that floor after 11 p.m. Claire began typing, then stopped, as if turning the moment into a checklist too quickly would shrink it. William looked at her. Write them down, he said softly. All of them, but not as complaints. As evidence. Zoe's eyes lifted at that word. Evidence. It seemed to honor what she had been doing all along. Claire nodded and typed carefully. Monica shook her head a little, overwhelmed. Mr. Harrington, you do not have to redesign a building because my daughter notices too much. Maybe the building needs someone who notices enough. His phone vibrated on the table. Claire glanced at the caller identification. Board chair. William did not pick it up. The phone buzzed again, impatient, expensive, used to being answered. He turned it face down. Zoe noticed and added a small rectangle to her drawing, dark and silent on the table. What happens to Mr. Victor? She asked. William leaned back slowly. He will face the consequences of what he did. The company will cooperate with the proper authorities. The lawyers will handle the rest. Zoe thought about that. And the man with the ring? Evan Cole. William's voice hardened. We will find out exactly what he received and what he promised. He laughed, Zoe said. The room stilled. When he said blame the cleaning woman, he laughed like she was not a real person. Monica's face tightened. William looked at her, then at the badge clipped near her coat, then at the sketchbook where Zoe had drawn every little thing adults had dismissed as background. He was wrong, William said. Zoe held his gaze. Then make the room say that too. William understood. Not a private apology. Not a quiet correction buried under legal language. The room that had almost believed the lie needed to hear the truth. He stood, but this time he did not stand far away. He stood beside the table, close enough for Zoe to hand him the sketchbook if she chose to, far enough to let her decide. Claire, he said, bring the board into the small auditorium. No press yet. Monica and Zoe stay here unless they choose otherwise. I want legal present, human resources present, security present, and every senior executive who was in that ballroom. Claire nodded. What are you going to tell them? William looked at Zoe's newest drawing, at the version of himself with no mouth, and for the first time all night he knew exactly what to say. I am going to tell them the truth before someone else teaches this company how to lie again. The small auditorium on the 21st floor had been designed for confidence. Its walls were paneled in pale oak, its seats were upholstered in dark blue leather, and its stage was framed by two screens usually reserved for quarterly forecasts and innovation announcements. Tonight, the room felt different. The air carried the clean scent of polished wood and fresh coffee, but underneath it was the tense quiet of people who had been called away from a gala and understood that celebration was no longer the purpose of the evening. Board members filled the front rows. Senior executives sat behind them with phones face down on their laps, pretending not to glance at one another. Human resources, legal counsel, security, and information technology stood along the side wall in careful clusters. William Harrington entered without music, without applause, without the glow of the ballroom behind him. Claire Bennett followed with her tablet held against her chest. Monica and Zoe remained in the private conference room down the hall, but the yellow sketchbook was with William now, resting in his hands with Zoe's permission. Before he left, she had looked at him and said, "Do not make it sound smaller." He had promised he would not. Now he stood at the front of the auditorium, facing the people who had trusted Victor Langley because William had trusted him first. For a moment, he said nothing. He let the silence become honest. Then he opened the sketchbook to the page with the hallway, the plant, the man with the gold ring, and the words that had changed everything. At 7 o'clock tonight, William began, I was prepared to sign a partnership agreement that would have exposed this company to a betrayal already in motion. I did not discover that betrayal. My legal team did not discover it. My board did not discover it. A child did. The room shifted, not loudly, but enough. A chair creaked. Someone took in a breath. William continued. She was sitting on the floor of our executive level while her mother worked a night shift. She had a sketchbook. She drew what she saw. Because of those drawings, we found a hidden drive, a stolen transfer package, and evidence that a senior leader attempted to redirect blame toward a member of our cleaning staff. The head of human resources looked down. One of the board members, an older man named Douglas Reeve, raised a hand slightly. William, before we go further, we should be careful with language. Attempted blame is a serious phrase. William looked at him. So is blame the cleaning woman. Douglas went still. Claire tapped her tablet, and the words appeared on the screen behind William, enlarged from Zoe's drawing beside a forensic timeline. No one spoke. The childish handwriting made the phrase more devastating, not less. The letters were uneven, innocent, copied by someone who had not understood why adults would say such a thing. William turned back to the room. We have confirmation that a termination form was prepared against Monica Carter this afternoon, scheduled for submission tomorrow morning. The stated reason was the unauthorized presence of a minor on a restricted floor. That form originated from an administrative account assigned to Victor Langley's office. A woman from legal closed her eyes briefly. Another executive whispered something under his breath, then stopped when William looked his way. This company almost punished the wrong person because the lie was designed to travel through our systems faster than the truth. William's voice did not rise. It did not need to. That is not only a security failure. It is a moral failure. The words seemed to strike the back wall and return. For years, Harrington had been known for clean numbers, clean lines, clean messaging. Moral failure was not a phrase that lived in its annual reports. But tonight, it belonged there. Claire stepped forward and read from her tablet. Information technology has traced the export of the H storage package to Mr. Langley's executive workstation at 11:43 p.m. The emergency override for room 17B was initiated at 11:39 p.m. using a senior authorization pathway. The drive recovered from the planter contains a draft communication to Northstar Grid Legal and encrypted transfer notes. Corporate counsel has preserved all files and will coordinate with outside authorities. A younger board member, Priya Shah, leaned forward. What about Evan Cole? We are pursuing every legal avenue, Williams said. But tonight is not only about Evan Cole. It is about how Victor believed he could use our hierarchy as camouflage. He thought night staff would not be heard. He thought a child would not be believed. He thought my pride would matter more than the facts. He paused, then looked toward the empty aisle as if seeing Zoe there, small and steady with blue pencil on her thumb. He was almost right. That admission moved through the room more sharply than the evidence. William Harrington did not often confess weakness in public, especially not in front of his board. But this was not confession for drama. It was accountability. The head of human resources spoke quietly. What happens to Miss Carter? She keeps her job, Williams said. With back pay for tonight, paid leave for the remainder of the week if she wants it, legal protection paid by the company, and a written apology from this organization. Not from a department. From the organization. The head of human resources nodded quickly. Of course. Williams' gaze hardened. Not of course. If it had been of course, she would not have been placed in danger of losing her livelihood by a form no one questioned. The room absorbed that. He turned a page in the sketchbook and lifted the drawing Zoe had made of the cold hallway, the broken chair by the cleaning closet, the vending machine, the camera angled too high. There is more. Some executives looked confused. They had expected stolen files, legal exposure, perhaps criminal referral. They had not expected a child's drawing of a break area. This is what Zoe noticed while waiting for her mother. A broken chair where night staff take breaks. A vending machine that takes quarters without returning food. A security camera pointed high enough to record faces, but not hands. A hallway cold enough that a child kept her cardigan buttoned indoors. He looked across the room. None of these are billion-dollar problems. That is exactly why we missed them. Claire's eyes softened as she looked down at her notes. Williams set the sketchbook on the podium. Tomorrow morning, we begin a full review of night staff conditions, childcare emergencies, security blind spots, break areas, and reporting systems for employees who do not sit on this floor during business hours. But it will not be led only by executives. It will include the people who actually use those hallways after midnight. Douglas Reeve shifted again. William, with respect, we should avoid overcorrecting in the middle of a crisis. William looked at him for a long second. Overcorrecting is what people call justice when they preferred. The old imbalance. The auditorium went completely still. Claire's tablet chimed once more. She checked it, and her face changed. William noticed immediately. "What is it?" Claire walked to him and spoke low, but the room was quiet enough to catch the edge of her words. Victor's attorney arrived. Victor is now claiming that Monica Carter planted the drive after being promised money by North Star. He is asking for her bag and locker to be searched. A murmur rose, fast and uneasy. William felt the old machinery of doubt try to restart in the room. One accusation, if said with enough confidence, could make people look away from everything they had just learned. Then the auditorium door opened softly. Monica stood there with Zoe beside her. No one had called them. No one had invited them in. Zoe held her sketchbook under one arm, her blue pencil in hand, her face calm in a way that made every adult turn toward her. "He is lying again," she said. William stepped away from the podium. "Zoe, you do not have to be in here." She looked at the screen, at the adults, then at him. "I know." Then she opened her sketchbook to a page William had not seen before. But he forgot the locker has a window. The page Zoe opened was not one of the dramatic drawings, not the glass office, not the hidden drive, not the man with the gold ring. It was quieter than all of them, and because of that, it made the auditorium lean closer. In the drawing, Monica Carter's employee locker stood in a narrow staff corridor behind a half-glass door. Zoe had drawn the little rectangle of window at the top, the row of gray lockers, the cleaning cart parked near the wall, and the reflection of the hallway light on the floor. At first, no one seemed to understand why it mattered. Then Zoe pointed to the corner of the page with the blue pencil. "That is my mom's locker," she said. "Number 12. Monica looked at the drawing and frowned slightly. "Zoe, when did you draw this?" "When you went to get the extra mop heads," Zoe said. "I was sitting by the cart." William stepped down from the front of the auditorium and walked slowly toward her, careful not to crowd her. "What are we looking at?" Zoe tapped. "The paper again. The door has a little window. The locker room door. You can see the lockers from the hall if the light is on." Claire moved beside William and studied the page. "She is right," she said. "The staff locker corridor has a glass panel in the upper half of the door." Zoe nodded. "Mr. Victor said Mom put the silver thing in her own locker, right?" Claire glanced at her tablet. "His attorney is claiming Monica had access to a drive and may have hidden related materials in her locker. But Mom did not open her locker after the plant," Zoe said. "She was with me." Monica turned toward the room, her voice quiet but firm. "I have not been back to the locker area since before the gala started." Douglas Reeve folded his hands, looking uncomfortable. "We need to verify that objectively." Zoe looked at him, not offended, only patient in the way she had been patient with every adult who arrived late to the obvious. "That is why I drew it." She turned the page. The next drawing showed the same corridor, but now there was a man standing near the lockers. Zoe had not drawn his whole face because she had only seen him through the small window at an angle. But she had drawn his sleeve, his cuff link, and the side of his watch. The watch had the same scratch. A low sound moved across the auditorium, not quite a gasp, not quite a whisper. William looked at the drawing, then at Claire. "Where is Victor right now?" "Conference room C," Claire answered. "With counsel." And before that, Claire typed quickly. Security escorted him from the ballroom to conference room C. He was not alone at any point after the drive was found. Zoe pointed again. This was before, when everyone was still in the ballroom and you were talking to the people with cameras. He walked fast past the cleaning hallway. I thought he was going to the bathroom, but he stopped by the lockers. William's jaw tightened. "Why did you not say this before?" Zoe looked down at the sketchbook. "Because I did not know it was important until he blamed Mom again." Monica's eyes glistened, and she placed one hand gently on Zoe's shoulder. The gesture said enough. A child should not have to know which details. We'll save her mother's name. She should not have to keep proving that the world around her happened exactly as she saw it. Claire turned to the security director, standing along the wall. "Pull camera footage from the staff locker corridor, West Service Hall, starting when Mr. Langley left the ballroom and going back 20 minutes. The security director nodded and stepped into the aisle, already speaking into his phone. Victor's accusation had done what accusations often do. It had forced the room to look again. Only this time, looking again did not help him. William returned to the podium, but he did not stand behind it. He stood beside Zoe and Monica, no longer separating the powerful from the people who had brought the truth. The screen behind him changed from the forensic timeline to a live security interface. Grainy footage appeared, the West Service hallway, the cleaning cart, the locker room door with its small window. The timestamp glowed in the lower corner. 11:58 p.m. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then Monica appeared briefly, pushing her cart, Zoe walking beside it with her sketchbook tucked under one arm. They moved out of frame. The footage advanced. Midnight, 12:03, 12:07. The hallway remained empty. Then, at 12:10, Victor Langley entered the frame. Not with the calm stride he used in boardrooms, but quickly, shoulders tight, head turning once toward the ballroom corridor. He paused at the locker room door. The camera did not show inside the room clearly, but through the glass panel, his arm moved near the row of lockers. The scratched watch flashed once beneath the overhead light. The auditorium fell into a silence so complete that the faint hum of the projector seemed loud. Monica stared at the screen, her face pale with disbelief and relief tangled together. Zoe did not look surprised. She looked sad, as if another adult had simply become exactly who she feared he was. On the footage, Victor stepped back from the locker room door, adjusted his jacket, and walked away. Claire spoke, her voice controlled. "Freeze there." The image stopped with Victor's wrist near the glass. Claire zoomed in. The scratch on the watch caught the light. She zoomed again. His cuff link showed the Langley family crest, a small silver L inside a circle. No one could mistake it now. William looked at the head of Human Resources. No one touches Monica Carter's locker without her present, her consent, legal counsel, and a recorded chain of custody. Is that understood? The head of Human Resources nodded quickly. Understood. William turned to the board. Victor attempted to frame an employee after stealing from this company. When the first lie failed, he created a second one. When that failed, he tried to make us doubt her again. He looked at Zoe. And again, the truth was already in a drawing. Zoe held the sketchbook close. The blue pencil had left another smudge along her finger. Claire's tablet chimed once more. She read the message, and this time her voice carried something close to finality. Security has completed a visual check of Monica's locker with her permission from the hallway camera angle only. There appears to be a second device taped beneath the interior shelf. They are waiting for legal and Monica before opening anything. Monica whispered, "I never put anything there." William answered before anyone else could. "I know." 2 words. Simple, public, immediate. Monica closed her eyes, and one tear slipped down, not from defeat, but from the release of not having to stand alone against a lie designed by people with offices higher than hers. Zoe looked at William for a long moment. "You said it faster this time," she said. He understood what she meant. The first time, he had looked at the drawing and hesitated. The second time, he had waited for logs and drives and expert confirmation. Now, when Victor tried to stain Monica's name again, William believed the pattern before the lie could grow roots. "I am learning," he said softly. The auditorium doors opened, and corporate counsel entered with a sealed folder. Behind her, 2 security supervisors stood calmly. Counsel walked to William and spoke clearly enough for the front rows to hear. "Mr. Langley's attorney has been informed that additional footage contradicts his statement. Mr. Langley has declined further comment." William nodded, then turned back to the room. "Then we will comment with facts." He lifted Zoe's sketchbook, not high like a trophy, but carefully, respectfully, as evidence entrusted to him by someone who had no reason to trust the room that ignored her. This company almost let a lie travel farther than a child's truth. That will not happen again tonight. Zoe looked toward the screen, where Victor's frozen image remained trapped in the hallway window, one hand near a locker that was never his to touch. Then she turned one final page. On it was a drawing of the ballroom before everything changed. William holding the gold pen, Victor smiling beside him, and Zoe standing far away near the service doors. At the bottom, in small blue letters, she had written, before they looked closer. William read the words and felt them settle somewhere deeper than shame. They felt like instruction. They felt like a second chance. By the time the truth finished unfolding, the gala flowers had begun to look almost unreal. White orchids still climbed the ballroom walls, blue lights still washed over the glass podium, and the unsigned contract still lay open beneath the gold pen, but nothing in the room belonged to celebration anymore. It belonged to what had been revealed, what had almost been hidden, and what one child had refused to let disappear. Victor Langley was no longer in the ballroom, no longer on the stage, no longer standing beside William Harrington with the smile of a trusted partner. His access had been revoked. His statements had collapsed under footage, metadata, the hidden drive, the planted device, and the careful blue lines inside Zoe Carter's sketchbook. Evan Cole's name had been turned over to counsel. The board had voted unanimously to suspend the partnership, preserve all evidence, and cooperate fully with the proper authorities. But for William, the most important verdict did not come from the board table or legal counsel. It came from Monica Carter sitting quietly in the front row of the auditorium, her employee badge still clipped to her coat, her daughter beside her with pencil smudges on her fingers. Monica had not been cleared by kindness. She had been cleared by truth, and that difference mattered. William stood in front of the room one final time, not behind the podium, not above anyone, but on the same floor as the people who had almost been sacrificed to protect a lie. His voice was lower now, worn at the edges by the long night, but steadier than it had been when the evening began. Before anyone leaves, he said, this company will put in writing what should have been said out loud the moment Monica Carter was accused. She did not steal from us. She did not hide evidence. She did not endanger this company. She worked her shift, protected her child, and told the truth when the truth became uncomfortable. Monica looked down at her hands. Zoe looked up at William. The auditorium stayed silent, not because people were afraid to speak, but because the words deserved room to stand. William continued, Monica, your employment is secure. Your record is clear. The termination form prepared under your name will be preserved as evidence of misconduct, not as a mark against you. You will receive paid leave, company legal support, and a formal apology signed by me and the board. Monica inhaled slowly, as if the air had finally reached a place inside her that had been holding tight all night. Thank you, she said, barely above a whisper. William shook his head. No, thank you for raising a daughter who told the truth in a room trained to doubt her. Zoe's eyes lowered to the sketchbook on her lap. She touched the worn yellow cover, and for the first time that night, her face softened into something almost shy. William turned toward the rest of the auditorium. And this does not end with an apology. Claire stepped beside him, tablet in hand, but she did not speak over him. This was not a press release. It was not damage control. It was the beginning of a different kind of ledger, one that counted what the company had ignored. Effective immediately, Williams said, Harrington Tower will create an after-hours family support policy for emergency situations, a secure waiting room for employees' children when childcare unexpectedly fails, a full review of night staff working conditions, and a direct reporting line that does not pass through the same managers who may have reason to bury a complaint. The review will include the people who work these halls after dark, not just the people who visit them at noon. The head of human resources nodded with the seriousness of someone who understood that this promise would be measured. Douglas Reeve looked down at his notes, silent now. Priya Shah gave a small, firm nod, as if the company had finally stepped onto ground she could stand on. Zoe raised her hand. The gesture was small, almost like she was in school. William turned to her immediately. Yes, Zoe. The chair by the cleaning closet, she said. Please do not forget that one. A soft sound moved through the room. Not laughter exactly, but something warmer, something that broke the remaining tension without making the moment smaller. William nodded solemnly. The chair by the cleaning closet will be replaced tomorrow morning. Zoe thought about that. And the vending machine? The vending machine too. And the camera that points too high? Claire answered this time. That one is already on the list. Zoe looked satisfied, not impressed, just satisfied, as if adults were finally performing at a basic level. Monica brushed a hand over her daughter's braids, touching the yellow beads lightly. Baby, I think they heard you. Zoe glanced around the room. They heard the drawings first. William looked at the sketchbook, then at the unsigned contract still visible through the open auditorium door in the distant ballroom. He had nearly trusted a signature more than a warning, a partner more than a pattern, a polished voice more than a child who had no reason to lie. He walked to Zoe and crouched to her level, careful, as always, to give her space. May I ask you something? He said. Zoe nodded. Would you allow us to make copies of the pages that relate to tonight for evidence? The original sketchbook stays yours. Zoe hugged it closer for a second, then looked to Monica. Monica nodded gently. Only copies. Zoe asked. Only copies, Williams said. And only with your mother present. Zoe considered him, then handed the sketchbook to Monica first. Monica placed it in William's hands, not as a surrender, but as permission. William understood the difference. Hours later, after statements were taken, evidence was sealed, and the last guests left Harrington Tower through the quiet marble lobby. William walked alone back into the ballroom. Staff had begun clearing untouched plates and half-full glasses. The city outside the windows had gone deep and dark, the river reflecting scattered lights like broken gold thread. The contract was still on the podium. William picked up the gold pen, looked at it for a long moment, then placed it inside his jacket pocket. Not as a trophy, as a reminder of the line he had not crossed because a little girl stopped him. Near the service hallway, he found Zoe standing with Monica while Claire arranged a company car to take them home. Zoe was drawing again. This time, the page showed the ballroom after everyone had left. Empty chairs, dimmed lights, a man standing alone by a glass podium, and a small square on the wall where she had drawn something new. William leaned closer. "What is that?" Zoe pointed to the square. "A frame. What is inside it?" "The picture from before they looked closer," she said. "But I changed the words." William looked at the bottom of the drawing. In careful blue letters, Zoe had written, after they finally listened. 6 weeks later, a framed copy of that drawing hung outside the main boardroom of Harrington Tower. Not hidden in William's private office. Not placed in a hallway where only executives passed. It hung where visitors, cleaners, interns, investors, and board members could see it. Beneath it was a small brass plaque that read, "The smallest eyes may see the truth first." Look closer. Monica kept her job, but not quietly. She joined the first employee advisory group for night staff, where her practical knowledge changed policies faster than consultants ever had. The broken chair was replaced. The vending machine was repaired. The hallway camera was lowered to see what mattered. The cold waiting room became a warm one, with soft chairs, books, crayons, and a small shelf for sketch pads. Zoe did not become a symbol to be used by adults. Her mother made sure of that. She stayed a child. She went to school, rode the bus, drew city buildings and pigeons in people's shoes, and sometimes visited Harrington Tower after hours when Monica had advisory meetings. William never again passed the service hallway without looking down it. He learned names. He asked better questions. He listened before the evidence had to shout. And sometimes, when the boardroom grew too polished and the voices around him became too certain, his eyes moved to the framed drawing outside the door. A little girl had once stood far away near the service entrance, holding a yellow sketchbook while powerful men prepared to decide the future. They had almost missed her. They had almost missed everything. But blue pencil lines had caught what pride, money, and trust had failed to see. And because one child drew the truth exactly as she saw it, a billionaire learned that justice does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits in a small hand, on a worn yellow page, asking only for one adult to look closer.